So, as you know, this topic is about multitasking and hopefully how to stop doing it and start getting things done. And you can see my socials, and you're happy to contact me with questions or just friend me whenever. That's always nice to get more friends.
Mm.
So, networking, just like we're doing tonight, but tonight you can all be in the nice comfort of your home where you're used to everything and hopefully feel safe. But networking is a big part of our work, whether it's a user group or a conference or a holiday party, maybe with your company. But have you ever noticed how exhausting those things can be? Think about it. You're in a new venue, looking for maybe where to put your coat, finding the toilet. You're scanning the room for familiar faces while also meeting new people. You're trying to remember names, roles, and conversation, all while balancing maybe a drink or a snack. Before you even settle in, your brain has processed a flood of new information. This is multitasking in action, navigating new settings, absorbing content, and keeping up socially all at once. No wonder that we feel drained afterwards. Now, imagine this level of mental overload every day, not from networking events, but from how we work. If we're constantly switching tasks, reacting to interruptions, and juggling priorities without structure, we are setting ourselves up for burnout. So, what is the alternative? Well, let's talk about how to manage focus, structure our work, and avoid that mental drain of constant context switching. Even without those networking events, our daily work can still feel chaotic and overwhelming. We juggle multiple tasks like meetings or coding, stakeholder calls. Sometimes we even code during those meetings because we have a lot to get done. And some of us thrive in organized chaos, but eventually it often becomes too much to handle. And planning and scheduling help avoid that stress of constantly cleaning up that mess later. So many of us skip that upfront planning, but it's key to a smoother and more controlled workflow. And just the smallest of changes can help you structure your work and make a huge difference. And it will help you feel more at ease at what's to come. So, my name is Linda Torrång. I am from Sweden, and I work as a data platform engineer for Analytics Masterminds, which is a new part of Data Masterminds. I mostly work with advisory and guidance to help our clients, in-house engineers and analysts, build their own analytical solutions. I am also a mother of two daughters who makes every day interesting, and as a parent, it is always a challenge to not multitask. I also love to listen to people and help others by being their rubber duck. It's an excellent way of learning new things and hear how other people solve their difficulties. I also host the Swedish Power BI and Fabric user group with my friend and colleague Alexander Arvidsson, which is actually having an event tonight at the exact same time. But I'm here for you instead. So I'm also a Microsoft MVP. I have not been that for a year. I got that title during summer. So still very new, still very fresh, and very honored about that title. And not to forget, I am a multitasking addict. I have presented these sessions a few times now, and every time it is a constant reminder for myself that I still don't do all of that I advise other people to do. It's so easy to fall back into bad habits. So this topics clearly needs repetition for me and for other people from time to time. So I am going to tell you a little bit of a horror story. A few years ago, I found myself in a situation where I was constantly juggling multiple tasks at work. I thought that I was being efficient, but it soon became very clear to me that it wasn't. For example, I had a project that was coming to a close. We were going to production the following week, and we had some final fixes, but also a lot of meetings with stakeholders that you often do towards the end. And during one of those meetings, I tried to get some stuff done at the same time. I was working in SQL at the time, and I wrote an update statement. It was a small fix to get everything fixed before we go live. The update was meant for one specific row. And I think you can all know where this is headed. I wrote the script exactly as it was meant to, while other people in the meeting were chatting away. So far so good. Then someone asked me a question, and I switched in my brain to answer that question. Getting back to my script afterwards, I marked the code and I ran it. But I had forgotten about the where clause. So that one row, it was every row. My task switching brain couldn't keep up. So disaster, basically. And I set the entire project back and I had to scramble to fix it. We did not go to production the week after, and I learned my lesson the really hard way. That was neither efficient or productive, which was my intention from the beginning. And you might not have hopefully done anything equally bad, but probably there is something in your mind when things didn't really work out the way you anticipated it to. And that experience made me realize I was not getting more done, I was just doing many things poorly. So I started researching how multitasking affects our brain and productivity, and I learned a few key things that changed the way I work. So this is the agenda that we're going through. We will start by defining what multitasking really is and some common misconceptions and the consequences that it will lead to. How to find what triggers us and how to solve it depending on those kind of different triggers. And hopefully end up in a better and more controlled working environment. So let's start by discussing definitions and some common misconceptions. Do you believe that you are good at multitasking? Many people say yes to this question because we are so prone to actually doing it. But if you're honest with yourself, you know that this is probably not a sustainable solution. Multitasking can be many things. It is not only connected to work. Multitasking is whenever you perform more than one task simultaneously. In theory, it sounds efficient. Doing multiple things at once should lead to more things getting done, right? However, what we often think of as multitasking is actually task switching, the rapid shifting of focus from one task to another. And every time you switch task, your brain takes time to refocus, which can waste valuable time for you instead. And studies show that multitasking actually reduces productivity by up to 40%. That is very much. We live in a culture where being constantly busy is often seen as a badge of honor. Fully booked weekends, skipping breaks, and always being on and connected. But is that really productive? The truth is, not all tasks are created equal when it comes to multitasking. Some tasks are easy to combine, like walking and talking. That is something that we do autonomously. But others demands our full attention. For example, driving in a new city. Wherever you need to find a parking spot, you instinctively turn down the music because you need your full brain to look for that parking space. And the same applies to work. You might manage to write emails while listening to music, but try writing emails while listening to a podcast, and suddenly your brain is going to struggle. Why? Because our brains aren't built for complex multitasking. Switching between tasks actually drains our mental energy, making us less productive. So let's break down some of those common misconceptions about multitasking and explore how we can work smarter, not just busier. I'm good at multitasking because I do it all the time. Frequent multitasking can give you the illusion of skills, but it often leads to superficial engagement with the tasks, meaning nothing gets the full attention that it deserves. And to be in constant multitasking mode might feel productive since you're doing so many things at the same time, but it often results in more mistakes. And that is just lower quality work and more stress. Multitasking is the only way to handle a heavy workload. Well, my friend, that is not the answer to a heavy workload. Multitasking creates a false sense of urgency and can increase stress levels, making it even harder to manage an even normal workload efficiently. So instead of juggling tasks and prioritize and focus on one task at a time, that will lead to better outcomes. This approach leads to reduced stress and allows for higher quality of work instead. And if it's not possible to do one thing at a time in the time frame that you have, then you might need to accept that one thing or more will not be done. And choosing that one thing or several things that won't be done is probably better than doing them all with less great results. It's when we start seeing what we can't fit into our schedule that we know how much things that we actually can expect our schedule to cover and learn to plan ahead better for the future. We have to accept at some point that the number of tasks is too many. You can train your brain to multitask better. No, if this is your belief, then you're far down the drain and thinks probably more of yourself that is humanly possible. While you can train yourself to switch tasks more quickly, you can't improve your brain's ability to focus on multiple complex tasks simultaneously. The human brain has limitations on attention and focus. While practice might help with efficiency in switching, it doesn't negate the cognitive cost of dividing your attention. So, while trying to do a lot of things at once, you lose all of that sense of accomplishments. And each switch you make from one subject to another takes strain on your mental ability to focus, like we already established. A day after skipping through several different things impacts your focus a lot. And after every switch, it will take you longer and longer to get back into focus mode again. And that, my friends, is a silent killer. It also goes by an actual real name, which is called attention residue. We don't intentionally think about this, but it is happening in the background. This is the concept of lingering thoughts from previous tasks that we bring in and affect the next task. You won't notice it at first, but after some time you'll get that sense of that you're getting nothing done, even though you're running around trying to do so many things. So trying to multitask can actually drop your IQ with an equivalent of a full night's sleep. Then how effective are you? Multitasking makes you dumber. It's just that simple. So the consequences of this behavior. Multitasking often leads to mistakes because the brain is not fully engaged in any one task. And constantly switching between tasks can lead to mental exhaustion, higher stress levels, and potentially burnout. In a team setting, multitasking can lead to miscommunication and misunderstandings, damaging your professional relationships. And that is not even mentioning your personal relationships with family or friends if you don't find a way to focus on where you are in the moment. You are able to task switch somewhat efficiently for a short period of time. But if this goes on every week, every month, year after year, it just won't work. And if you're doing everything at home and at work without focus and structure, some things will just be left behind. It might be your mental capacity taking a hit, or things that you actually forget to do. But there is hope. When we have accepted that multitasking isn't a long-lasting solution, we need to find a way of dealing with the constant load of things to get done. For every person, that is going to be different, but it could be a good start to try to recognize your personal triggers. When you know what they are, you know how to find a solution that is appropriate for it. So there are a few different triggers. For example, digital notifications, which is emails, social media alerts, instant messaging. Do you check your emails as soon as the notification pops up? Open tabs. If you have multiple browsers with many tabs open, that often leads to frequent switching of tabs and tasks and focus. Physical environment, noise, interruptions from colleagues or family if you work from home, or just cluttered workspace. Could also be internal triggers, boredom or anxiety about not getting everything done, or the habit of actually always staying busy. Do you switch tasks when a certain project becomes challenging? That's internal triggers. So before we can change our behavior, we need to know what causes it. If we don't address the right issue, the problem will be back again soon. So let's do a little exercise for yourself. Just self-assess and try to narrow it down. I will give you a minute to read through these questions. Okay, so which of these questions was the one that made you the most uncomfortable to answer? Do you not have a good way of starting your day? Is it a lack of planning and structure, maybe? Do you read the word notifications and make a cringe face? Or is it the last one that can be hard to pinpoint what it's caused by? That is the pattern that you need to address, because therein lies the behavior that you need to change. Just like any smoker, that having that first morning cigarette with the coffee, maybe, we need to identify what kind of behavior this pattern occurs in to be able to remedy it. Here's just a few suggestions for solutions to these different statements, but we will go through them all in more detail as we move along. But the solution to your specific problem might be different because the triggers, but they all have one thing in common, and that is time management. So even if it is to start your day with a clear agenda, or divide your big project in tasks, or disable notification, it all comes down to time management. We need to manage our time and accept that a day only have 24 hours, and we are probably working for less than half of those. It doesn't have to be a big life change. You could start small and just change one thing, and that will inevitably lead to an actual difference in your everyday life. For those of you who want to read up more about making small changes and the effect they can have, I highly recommend the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. That is a really good book. Bad habits take time to break, so it's not going to be done in a day. But be kind to yourself and accept that, but at least start that change, but start small so it's manageable for you.
Murray's just said, which book was it? It was Atomic Habits, wasn't it?
Atomic Habits by James Clear. Yeah.
I do a podcast with Wyn Hopkins, and that was his January. That was his January resolution. His objective was to read one chapter of that every couple of weeks. He hasn't started yet.
So having some catching up to do then. But yeah, I think that book has been on like the top seller list for years now. It is really good actually. So yeah. Okay. So when we start to practice time management, we can start by using one of our real life scenarios that I say, many of us do in work. Imagine that you are building a data warehouse, complete from scratch for a whole new project. You know that this is not a quick task. It will take weeks or even months, maybe years if it's a really big thing. It will not be a few hours. So to manage this effectively, start by breaking down into key tasks and estimating how much time each one will take. Then instead of just blocking off undefined large chunk of time, schedule specific work sessions in your calendar. For example, 4 focused hours per day dedicated for this project. By spreading those hours across several weeks, you actually create a realistic timeline. This also makes it clear that even if you've estimated 40 hours for a client, it doesn't mean that you'll complete it in a single work week. Instead, those 40 hours might be spread over 4 weeks, allowing for other responsibilities because we have those as well. And if by the end of your planned time the project isn't finished, that's valuable feedback. It helps you to refine your future estimates and improve your time management. We won't get it perfect the first time, but by having a structured plan makes it easier to see what went wrong and adjust for it in the next run. Thing that is very, very important is actually to divide the kind of work we have. When do I do deep focus work? When do I do meetings, project plannings, etc.? These different kind of works will require different focus and attention from you. And if you don't know already when you are the most productive, that could be a personal homework for you. When are you the most focused? Is it before lunch? Is it late afternoon? Is it Mondays in general or Wednesdays? By thinking about that, we can allow ourselves to not schedule deep focus time on a Friday afternoon, for example, when we probably have the least energy. Don't schedule every minute of every day. That will just disappoint you when you can't keep to that schedule, because things will happen along the way. You need some wiggle room for ad hoc things. But dividing the kinds of work that we have into our schedule for when they fit the best is a start. It could also be a good thing to start listing the things that you actually need to get done, which will give you a visual overview. Maybe create a top 3 prio list of those tasks, which are the most important to get done right now. And plan those critical things into your calendar first when you have the highest probability of making them happen, depending on what kind of work they are. So divide your planning according to subjects and topics to different days a week. Research time might be good at the start of the week or by the end of it. Book meetings only before lunch and none thereafter, whatever it is. That is careful planning and the base of good time management. It is, and this is hard for many people to accept, but it is okay to be inconvenient and tell people that this meeting time they proposed doesn't work for you. The protection of your time is a sign to others that you have integrity and know what's best for you. And of course, you should tell people when you decline that meeting why you do that and what you propose instead. That most people will show understanding and adapt to it. It is okay to have needs and ask for things. Start with one thing and maybe add something when you get that first thing working for you. Like any sort of broken code, scale down and see what works and what doesn't. Can you change the code, or should you delete it altogether and start from scratch? And a very important thing on that topic that we just discussed, you might have a very long list of things to get done when you list them all. And you might realize that this is not possible during the time frame that you have. Don't be afraid to say no. Be aware of how much is on your plate and how long it will take to complete. If you can't fit it all or more into one day, address this early on to your manager or your team. It is better to point it out before than executing or excusing yourself afterwards when it already is too late. Seeing that upfront, that this is not going to be done in time, is good time management again, and making people aware. Because if you instead try to scramble and make all of those things happen, nothing will change the next week or the next month, because then your list is going to be too long every time. So when you have that list of tasks, it can help by prioritizing them, as I said, it might be an easy job for you, finding the 3 most important ones or not. You can utilize Eisenhower's Matrix to help you prioritize your tasks based on urgency and importance. This matrix categorizes tasks into 4 boxes. We have urgent and important, not urgent but important, urgent but not important, and neither urgent nor important. And by that, we know how to deal with it. For example, you have a deadline for a certain thing coming up. That is urgent and quite important. Do it now. Do you need to review an architecture, but there is no specific deadline for it? Decide on when to schedule it in. Do you need to book a meeting with a client or a stakeholder, but it's also including a couple of your colleagues? Delegate to one of them to reach out to a client and find a good time when it's scheduled the best. Do you have something in the back of your head that you would think that it's nice to get done, but it's really not important? Delete it. It is hard to kill your darlings, but sometimes we need to delete it. At least for now. It doesn't have to be that things will never be done, but if your plate is currently full, that is not in the list of your prioritizations. But I also want to say that it can be good for us to not only work on the super urgent tasks, but have that maybe one thing that is of less importance and urgency, and breathe a bit if your schedule allows it.
Oh.
Yeah, it is. And with this, we also need a technique on how to find that focus and accomplish those things. This is me. This is the best meme that explains me. We already have a very intense job that requires us to be on top of a lot of things at once. But we can't stay on top of all of the new releases or whatever it is, articles at the same time as doing our jobs. We have to make time for both. We need to have time for working and keeping up with releases in our calendar, but at separate times. Otherwise, if we chop up every day into 100 different focus areas, as we have discussed, our mental health is being slaughtered. I have a very good friend of mine who is one of the wisest person that I know, and she told me that she have a time slot every Friday that is called research time. So whenever an interesting article or a new release or something pops up, she just saves the link and put it in that book time of hers and goes back to that every once a week or twice a week to just go through all of those things, because it is a part of our work to keep up to date with it, but we have to schedule it. We can't just run on every notification to read up on it, because then we won't really be focused to remember what we actually read either. So no. But there are also a lot of good tips that we can keep in mind to get back in control of our own focus. I hope and I think that some of you have heard about the Pomodoro technique. It is mostly about keeping focused on one task and helping us to be reminded of taking breaks. We need to have breaks because no one is focused for 8 or 10 hours straight. Taking help to break up the time that we work and having those constant breaks can actually result in getting more things done with the breaks instead of never having them. So Pomodoro often starts with a 25-minute time slot where you're supposed to work on one thing and one thing only, and then an alarm goes off and you get 5-minute break. Then after those 5 minutes, the alarm beeps again and you're supposed to get back into it. So it actually helps you to just breathe every once in a while. And we need to breathe because our perspective might be too focused, so we don't actually see the big problem we're working on. Then we also have a lot of technical features that we can utilize. Stay focused. I think it's a website. It actually limits how much we can use other kind of websites. You can block other websites. You can block time slots for it. Rescue time. It actually tracks your digital habits, and you get a report to actually analyze your own patterns. That could be scary sometimes, but useful to see, like, oh, I'm spending all of that time just reading up on daily news. That doesn't have to happen. So it's easy to reduce those distractions. Then, as we discussed before about music and podcasts, the music that we choose can have vastly different impact on our focus. Noise music helps the brain relax and focus, and there are many different kinds. There are brown, pink, white. I'm sure there's more. Find something that helps your brain relax instead of listening to a podcast and trying to listen to that while you're coding or whatever you're doing. It will not give you the focus that you are trying to find. And again, I really cannot highlight this enough. Even if you use the Pomodoro or not, we need breaks. Go get a coffee, just walk around a bit, go say hi to a colleague. A few minutes outside does a wonder for our brains. I try to do a lunch walk every day. I don't manage to do it every day, but I try to. Just getting that extra air will help my focus extremely. So personally, I struggle a lot after lunch. After lunch, I am a wreck. Might having something to do with actually what I eat, but I don't know. So before lunch, I do a very non-techy thing. I write a post-it note to myself with the top 3 things that I need to get done afterwards. It really helps me to get back into action again instead of having to find in my fog of a brain what I should be doing. It's just better help for me. Likewise, I do it on Fridays before I sign off. I write something for my Monday self. What are my prioritization? Where did I left off? Some notes for myself just to come back on track again. It is so helpful. Just a few rows of things instead of just closing down and then on Monday, where was I? It takes a lot of time to get back to it. So try that.
Anthony said in Afrikaans, they call it, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Anthony, Maggie's vol, Oggie's toe, which translates as stomach full, eyes closed.
I'll say it in Afrikaans, Sue. It's called Maggie's vol, Oggie's toe.
It is very true. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one to be tired afterwards. So yeah. And maybe if you eat a salad, you don't fall asleep, but I don't eat salad, so it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
we've got it in Spanish now and in German.
You see it happening in every language. It's a universal thing.
Yeah.
But if your trigger from the short self-assessment that we did is distractions from notification, then what we're talking about now is for you. Shut down Outlook, Teams, Slack, LinkedIn, and keep focused on what you're actually doing. It sounds easy and maybe controversial, but if you don't have an on-call kind of job, then it's okay to not respond that second to whatever is reaching you in your inbox. This is one of the hardest things for me. I have zero self-control most of the time, and therefore I actually physically need to place my phone in another room to keep to what I'm doing, which is a mess when it comes to MFAs, but running back and forward gives me those breaks as well. I even found that I concentrate better when I'm sitting beside someone else. Then I feel more obliged to not disturb that person. And yeah, I think you all know what works for you. Pinpoint that and try to make changes where it could have the biggest effect. Do I feel like a child having to place that phone somewhere else? Yes, but it has a big effect on my work. So then I just have to be the adult and do that. There are hundreds of different ways of establishing better time management. It all comes down to actually making a decision to take that first step and create a plan and try to follow through. To put it in words that we all know, if you could optimize a database or a Power BI report with a significant amount by making one little change, would you do it? Of course you would. Take care of your mental capacity as you do with your technical optimizations. By doing less, you in fact gain productivity. If your trigger is physical distractions, then this could be actually quite easily fixed. Always keep your desk or office area decluttered. Maybe you can get into a habit by the end of the day to remove all of those unnecessary stuff that has accumulated so that you have that mental peace and quiet the next day when you start. And let your coworkers or family members know not to distract or talk to you because you are easily distracted. Maybe let them know that when your noise canceling headphones are on, they're not supposed to talk to you. Could also be having the right light in the room that you're working. Dark lighting might seem cozy to work in, but it will not help your energy levels to sustain throughout the day. Whichever is your trigger, I do recommend you to try monotasking. If I say that you should go to the bathroom without the phone, that might be a new thing to you. Try it. Take a walk without a podcast or a telephone call or even music. Just walk. Try it out and see how it feels. We often talk about work-life balance, and that cannot be highlighted enough. But even if you have nailed down that work-life balance, it won't save you from a chaotic work schedule. It doesn't matter how much time off you have then. It's still an overwhelming chaos that will be hard for anyone to get things done during. We won't be able to get away from the reality, which consists of several different things trying to steal our attention. But by identifying what our weakness is, we can change that behavior. So what is your kryptonite and how will you fix it? thank you. And I hope you all learned something.
Yeah, there's been lots of thank you, Linda. There's been so much chat non-stop in the whilst you've been talking about people's different methods and what works for some, and there was quite a bit of discussion about music. So I mean I think a few of us were saying that sometimes music, and again it depends upon the music, but I know I find if I'm thinking ish, and it depends how in depth I have to think. If I have to really concentrate, full on concentration, then no music and I need complete quiet. But if I'm sort of mulling and thinking and pondering and planning, then I might have some really gentle music on. But I can't listen to podcasts or YouTube or anything like that if I'm working. That's, I listen to podcasts when I'm driving, but I can't listen to I can't listen to podcasts when I run. A lot of people listen to podcasts when they run, but I can't. It distracts me. So I tend to have a playlist that I don't actually hear, but it's sort of like background
It's
noise.
just there, yeah. I actually found that when I plan work or when I plan architecture or dimensional models, classical music is perfect for me. But when I actually code, I need like heavy metal or hard rock. Yeah, I have I realize that my brain is so busy. So to remove all of that busyness and all of that thoughts, I need really loud and distracting music to get away from them. So it works for me. So that's
I think that's it. There's so many people are sharing so many things, and it's actually really recognizing what works for you and using those techniques for yourself.
I'm the same as you, Linda. It's really interesting. Is like I prefer classical sort of music. If I'm writing stuff up or writing a proposal or email or whatever, I work best on that. But then I've got to have sort of rock music or something else like that when I'm doing building a report or building, writing some decks and stuff.
Move fast
that's,
or something.
That's how, and often like when I've studied, I prefer having, jingly sort of music going.
Oh, that would drive me to distraction. I would just be throwing it out the window.
It works better for me. I tend to take stuff in better for me personally. If I've got no music, I tend to just forget stuff. Weirdly. But it's interesting, like say, it's like how we've been saying in the chat, where like some of us love having a clean desk. That's the only way we can operate. Whereas others, the desk looks like a jolly tornado's come through side of things. And you're sort of thinking, how do you operate on that? Well, because some people they can do it.
I could just be looking at it, just be it.
But that's just the thing. We're all different. And it's very much about finding what works for you. Because someone's advice is not going to be the next person's advice. So
I think those chunks, like you're saying, turn off notification. I don't have any notifications flash up because you can get so distracted. And I just have my phones to the side. I don't tend to look at it. But
we often just think, we assume that we always should have all of those notifications and see all of the emails that comes in, but we really don't need it. So,
well, I sometimes get told because I don't pick up the phone. My phone's always on silent and it's always off notifications because otherwise I forget and it'll come through when I'm on a call or working or in a class or something. And then I think, but actually it's an invitation, isn't it? Just because you ring, it doesn't mean you have to pick up. Someone wants to get hold of you, but do you want to speak to them? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah.
Just because they want to speak to you doesn't mean you want to speak to them.
It's not convenient. You pick up when you do, but then I do, frequently I might go back every hour and just have a quick look and then carry on. But cooking, lots of people are talking about cooking being therapy.
Baking is therapy for me.
So Anthony keeps talking about baking, but we've not tried anything yet, Linda. None of his food.
It's just
Facade.
the problem is that it's it's now when you work from home, you can't really practice the things anymore because you just get fat.
You just go for a run, eat and then run. It's fine. Yeah. Lots of people say about taking away music, taking away focus and calm anxiousness. So if there's one thing that's made a huge difference to you, Linda, if you had to pick one thing.
For me, it was when I started listing the things that I do.
Yeah.
Because most often we do so many more things than we actually think. For me, I started like throughout the day listing things that I did or achieved.
Yeah.
When I thought I did 2-3 things, it turned out I did 10 things. And like, oh my, it's not that weird that I'm distracted all of the time then. So just that visibility can help really much.
Yeah, I suspect. What about you, Anthony? One thing?
Well, for me, I've realized that I can't do 2 or 3 things simultaneously. And I've also realized as well is that I tried it this week, interestingly, is that where I was having to open up, I had loads of Excel spreadsheets, and the way they work, I've got to open them up, run some VBA code, let that run through, and then save it and close it out. And so I thought, I could do some other things while that code is running. And it was only running for a few minutes. And I realized I actually can't do that because I couldn't actually focus on something else. So I could just say, I'm just going to sit at my desk and wait that 2 or 3 minutes for it to finish off on that.
Can't do that.
Oh, I tried to do something else, and I failed.
Yeah.
Because I was getting focused on that. And then suddenly I'd realized, 10 minutes has passed. Oh, hang on, this thing's finished long ago.
I can't wait. I think it's because I work for myself, and so I've got lots of different things. But I do one thing at a time. But if I've got if I've got 2 or 3 minutes, then I fill it doing something else.
Well, what I tend to find now is that if I've got to refresh Power BI reports, we've got quite a few VM machines. So I'll often log on to a VM machine, open up the report, let it start refreshing on that machine, and I'll go onto another machine and start another report refreshing off on that I've been developing. And then I can be working on something else project because I know those refreshes will take half an hour or so. So then I can just leave those to run while I'm sitting on my desk doing my other work. So I don't have to waste my time waiting for one thing. So I can be doing sort of almost three tasks at the same time.
I love that Tanya's just put in that she fills out a form. She has an MS form. Because I have to most of us have to manage our time effectively, but I obviously have to bill my time. At the end of the day, you think, what is it I did again? And see, and if you come back to it too, do you like, what did I do then? And quite often I have to go to my emails and look at my reports and say, oh yeah, that's what I was doing. But she says she uses a Microsoft form she fills out for accomplishments and then helps with time blindness, feeling like I didn't do anything. I suppose I do that.
Smart.
Yeah, that's quite a nice way to do it.
And then you could build a Power BI report off of those accomplishments then.
I mean, I've got an app. Let's just open the app and fill in the app. But
just pen and paper and just write things down.
Yeah, use an appointment book. 15 minutes. What was your win today? Oh, I like that.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a nice one, Tanya. Then you can look back and see what the wins were. Yeah, Tanya's also said Power BI has auto refresh, Anthony.
We don't know that, do we?
There's reasons.
Oh dear, but I do like your idea, and Tommy's just left the chat. He said the same. He would book out, leave the last 15 minutes of every day and the first 15 minutes to end of the day. What have I done? Almost like categorize it. What do I want to achieve tomorrow, so that when you come in, you're ready to go.
That plan up front thing really saves time, even if it looks like it's taking time.
Yeah, and also then your mind's. And I did the time management course early in my career, and they said every distraction, how long an interruption takes for you to then get your brain back in gear. And this was before we had Teams and everything. So it's something I try and focus on. But also, you know, like you say, if you're planning it out, then your brain's clear and you can almost like, well, I've done that. And that part of your brain can stop thinking about it then, because it's planned for the next day, which then allows you to go and, you know, be with your family or do the other things that you want to do without worrying about it.
Yeah. Otherwise, you tend to have it in your head and trying to remember what to do and when to do it. But if you have scheduled it or something, then you
don't have to remember
it can relax.
Then. Yeah, because it's then. And then the other thing is also, if it's going to take you longer to schedule it than it is to do it, then just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. You know, it's that thinking time. How long is it going to take me to think and plan it? If it's less than it is to do it, then just do it. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much, everyone. And thank you so much for putting us before the Swedish Fabric and Power BI group, your own group. So completely appreciated. And thank you to Alexander for helping us by having to do it on your own and releasing.
He'll manage fine.
But that was brilliant, Linda. Thank you so much, and so many useful. Much. Yeah, we've got showers now, and thank you. And everybody loved your voice.
Oh,
yes,
good.
There was lots
up for my bad English then.
No bad English. I think it was the way you explained it in a really lovely, relaxed manner. So yeah,
I'm glad.
That's great. So have a great rest of the evening, everyone. Look at that, 7 o'clock on the dot.
Oh, geez, perfect.
Told ya.
That means you get invited back again. Don't tell anyone I said that. Oh, thank you, Carolina. I'm glad you all enjoyed it, and have a great rest of the week, everybody.
Make sure you stop the recording, Sue.
Yes, I'll stop the recording now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. And thank you, Sue and Anthony.
It's nice to hear you, Fernando.